Hi, this is a Bonzolian video. I'm going to call it Bonzo Chat, where I often yap on the videos about this and that when I'm teaching. Let's say I'll say, hey, well, listen to this song, and then I talk for 10 minutes about something. So this is going to be an entirely talking video. So I can understand if you want to turn it off because you just see my fat head moving around like this. And I have this dog next to me, which I can't figure out how to get off. Anyway, so just a couple of things. I'm going to put in the video, I'm going to put links to some pictures because I haven't figured out how to put them on the screen. But also, too, I don't want somebody, some copyright stuff going on. And my counsel said that if I put the links in the info, I'm off the hook. So what I can do is I can say, all right, well, in the first picture I'm going to put on here, and you'll see the link, number 1. That way you can right-click it, open it up while my head is talking, and you can see, Terry, yes, that's what I see. I understand. I see that picture's interesting. Okay, let's talk about Bonham's muffling. In the bass drum, you'll see a lot of people, and you read in articles, or you'll hear people say, well, Bonham didn't use any muffling. Well, actually, he did. In my opinion, I wasn't sitting next to the guy the whole time. But if you look at his snare drum, and you'll see this in the Royal Albert Hall, you'll see right before he goes to play Moby Dick, he takes his hand and he undoes the tone control, okay? What is to make the drum a little livelier sounding. So he I think when Bonham would play, he would, again, this is my opinion, he would just touch the muffler to the bottom head. He wouldn't crank it, he'd just touch it just to kill a teeny bit of the ring. And then when Moby Dick would come along, he would just, you can see him. If you look closely in that, you'll actually see him messing with the tone control. Anyway, but now, if you go, I can't unfortunately put a link on that. I guess I could. I think on YouTube people put Royal Albert Hall. Maybe I'll try to put a link on that. But if not, just click on, in YouTube, you'll see Led Zeppelin, Royal Albert Hall. And you'll see around Moby Dick, you'll see right before he starts, Robert Plant's announcing, you'll kind of see Bonham doing it. Anyway, to the bass drum though. I'm going to put a bunch of pictures, I'm going to put some links, and you can do it yourself. But Bonham used to use, nowadays with drum heads, Ludwig and Aquarian and all these companies, Remo and everybody, they put sound dampeners around the edge of the head, which is a great idea. But if you look, and it's not just Bonham, I think a lot of drummers used to do it back then. I'm not exactly sure how they did it. If they take another drum head, maybe a 24, like a size down, probably not, but maybe the regular size, and they cut that head maybe. So they cut it around the aluminum edge, and then maybe they would glue that on the inside to the inside of the head to create a homemade, 30 years ahead of its time, muffling head for the front head. And there's plenty of photographic evidence if you look online. Actually, my YouTube homepage, if you look at that picture, you see Bonham's drums are set up. You can see very clearly there's an interior ring on the inside of the resonant head. And I'm not sure what the material is. And a lot of people, even me, when I first noticed it, I was like, well, it's got to be the lighting. But in a cylindrical thing, you're going to see, at any time, there are times where the lights are hitting in a certain way. It'll be like a slice. It won't be consistent. Lighting won't make it, in picture after picture, consistently around the inside of the head. And it looks like it's about maybe 3 inches that goes around. So look at my homepage. You'll see that picture. You'll see it. I'm going to put a couple other links in the in this video in the info where if you click on it, right click on it so you can keep my fat head cruising around yapping, you'll see some pictures. And I've noticed it, I've never seen it on the stainless steel, at least in pictures. But I've seen it on the maple, the Thermogloss kit, the green sparkle kit, and the amber. The amber, obviously, it's harder to spot because it's a clear front head. But if you look at some pictures, you can see it looks like, I had actually thought, what I actually did in my band when I played with the Zeppelin guys is I used rubber cement, contact cement, and I used like a template, like a 22-inch drum head I set in there with the head face up, and I spread contact cement, right? And it worked pretty well. It acted like it deadened the front head a little bit, which is actually, it's a practical thing. For the diehard Zeppelin people, you want to do it because people might notice it. When you're playing with the Zeppelin band, but also too, it is helpful to deaden the heads, especially with the bass drum, because Bonham's bass drum was muffled, and you can see in the pictures on the badder side with the amber kit, you can clearly see a felt strip going along the bottom down here. You can see it, and also on the green sparkle kit, there's some pictures, namely a couple from behind. I think there's a couple pictures from Texas behind. You can see the gong, so it's behind the stage to a curtain. You can see the light coming through the drums. You can clearly see a felt strip. So it's not a lot of muffling, but just enough to kind of, that's how you get the bottom bass drum sound, and not just bottoms, but, you know, back in those days, everybody used to do it. Just the bottom had a bigger sound, and, you know, and they recorded it that way, and it kind of became a trademark, is when you slightly muffle a big drum like that, you don't get a, you get a boom. It's like a wallop, like a boom. And that's the sound. So anyway, so I'll put some pictures on there. This is just for diehard Zeppelin gigs, Bonham gigs, but you will see, I'll put pictures on there. You can see Bonham, in fact, did use a felt strip on the batter head, and probably on the reso head sometimes too, but I think what they ended up doing, probably because it looked a little unsightly, they just put some sort of internal muffling, homemade muffling thing on the reso head, which is the front head that faces the audience. So I'll put some pictures there. Also, too, there was a thing I read a long time ago. I mean, I'm not as much as a Zeppelin foamer at the mouther that I used to be, but I remember reading something somewhere where, I'm going to turn this volume down a little. Can I do that? I don't know if I can control the volume that way. I know in some of my videos people will write, and I've seen it in other videos, it says, "RIP headphone users." Rest in peace for headphones, which I think is a hilarious comment. I don't do that on purpose. I'm trying to fix the sound of my drum camera. Anyway, well, I'm going to get a better camera and a microphone. Maybe have somebody help me make these videos. So, anyway, but I remember an article with John Paul Jones, and I can't find it. Actually, I think it was in a book that I read years and years ago. I think it was John Paul Jones, where they talked about Bonham sometimes would put cut up newspaper in his bass drum. He would actually cut up strips of newspaper and put it in there kind of loose. So that, again, would have the effect of making, you know, if the drum was totally unmuffled, if you hit a bass drum like that, it'll go boom, like that, boom, or boom, you know what I'm saying? But if you slightly muffle the heads, it'll go boom, like boom. There'll be some internal resonance, just a big present sound. Part of the Bonham sound, or that Bonham popularized, is that big drum head, even if it's just a 22, because supposedly the first record was recorded with, and I'm a diehard Zeppelin fan. There's a lot of, Zeppelin fans out there. That's why I'm making the video. It was a 22, 13, 16 Ludwig kit, which was green sparkle, supposedly. Anyway, but that kit, if you listen to Zeppelin 1, you can still hear the Bonham sound on those drums. And supposedly the snare was a 5x14 Superphonic. And if you listen, I mean, that's what they sound like. The snare drum sounds like a 5, or it doesn't sound like a 6.5 to me. But it's tuned. That's everything with Bonham too. That guy knew how to tune a snare drum. Every time the snare drum sounded that throaty sound. Every time. But anyway, but that's how you get the bass drum sound. Is it actually, when you tune a bass drum that way and you have a microphone, I'm not maybe sure how far, maybe 6 inches off or maybe a foot off, especially like a large, I think sometimes they used to use large, believe it or not, I think sometimes they'd use large diaphragm dynamic microphones, like a Shure 50, no, they didn't use a Shure 58, but like what they used to call an SM, was it called an SM7, or, they use them in broadcasting, but it's a large diaphragm dynamic mic. Or I think they also, what's another one of those too is an RE20. Who makes an RE20? So you'd recognize the microphone. In fact, you'll see RE20s over the Bonham kit at the Earl's Court shows, which is bizarre. I remember I was recording with an engineer one time. I said, people use an RE20 as an overhead. And he's like, that's impossible, dude. People don't use them as overhead. Sure enough, I brought the Zeppelin book. I said, dude, check them out. RE20s over the kit. Anyway, but that's a great low-end microphone for a bass cabinet. It picks up low-end. Anyway, but that's, to digress, that's how you get the Bonham sound, is a slightly muffled head, front head, in the bass drum and back head, to achieve that sound. And again, I'll post pictures on there where you can see what I'm talking about. What else? What else is all Bonham-y that I could yap about? I had a cool picture that I found online, and I can't find it now, which is a nice shot of Zeppelin playing Kezar Stadium. In 1973, it was maybe halfway through their tour. And they played a show at Kezar Stadium in San Fran. It's like a famous show. And anyway, but there's a shot taken behind Bonham, and I can't remember if he's in it, like see the back of his head, or if he's out of it. and it might be a Neil Preston picture because I think he took a lot of pictures at the show. I haven't been able to find. But what's interesting is you see his 2002s. All his symbols are 2002s except his ride symbol, 24, which is clearly a giant beat. It's like a brand new giant beat. And it's not a modern one, but it's a post-1971 one. From like 71 to about 73, well, to 4, because I've seen giant beats that I have actually a serial number that begins with 4. So from 1974, I don't know if they were just available in Europe or whatever. But it's a black label giant beat. And of course, the modern giant beats that they released in 2005, the inking design is based on the later giant beat inking, which was black label, which was on like the 12 o'clock position, the symbol toward the bell, in the 1880s general store font writing, as opposed to the white ink that was in the 9 o'clock position. Anyway, but it's an interesting picture, and I haven't been able to find it. But it's a cool picture. You can see very clearly it's this giant beat, 73. And then another thing I wanted to mention too was, there's another interesting picture that shows Bonham, I think it's 1972, that you can see on his snare drum. There's not, even though, they used to say, Bonham used, either Ludwig heads or Remo heads. I think it was mostly Remo heads, because any pictures I've ever seen from that I, online or whatever, behind the kit, you can clearly see the Remo emblem on the drum head in almost all of them. So, in my opinion, except for his bass drum front head, which almost all his bass drum heads, I think, were almost always, at least you can see, actually on all the kits, I don't think I've ever seen a Remo head on at least the front of the bass drum. It always says Ludwig somewhere, probably because of the Ludwig endorsement. It's funny. It's actually funny on the Amber kit. In every shot of the Amber kit, you can actually see the front head. There's a Ludwig logo, but the head's actually upside down. It's toward the top, like the 12 o'clock, and you know what I mean. So they, instead of putting the the logo on perfectly, with the logo at the bottom and then making the 3 circles, they actually probably did it, and maybe whichever way they thought looked best. Because sometimes if you make 3 circles, I've done it. There's sort of unless it's exactly perfect, there's sort of a better way with it. Anyway, so that's an interesting thing. But anyway, in these from like 1972, you can see he has a clear head on his snare drum, on his Superphonic. And if you see those pictures, and I'll put the link on here. It was from Bonham at one time. He has like a wizard's robe on and a long nose, and he's sitting there and he's playing the gong. He's like tapping on the gong, and you can clearly see that his top head is a clear head. I don't know if it's an ambassador or an emperor. And also, too, here's another interesting thing. That what Bonham used to do to not just anchor his drums, but also I think it was, at least apparently it was for sonic reasons, is they built, it's easy to do, they got probably 3 sheets of plywood, and I think the plywood might have, I would assume it was at least 5/8. I mean, it was, because it would fall apart otherwise. And they put like door hinges on it. So essentially, imagine a middle piece, and then a piece that would hinge here, and then another piece that would hinge here. So when they fold it up, it would look like this. They could carry. In fact, at the end of the Zeppelin DVD that came out, God, I don't know, it was 10 years ago now, that shows the Royal Albert Hall footage and some of the Earl's Court footage. The big thing that has, I have it in there. Everybody has it. It came out, it has all the footage of, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, if you look at the credits, there's this thing there when you look at the credits on the DVD, it shows it's a time lapse of them taking the stage apart at Madison Square Garden in 73 after the last show they did, which of course was the last show of the 1973 tour. So you're getting a lot of Zeppelin geekery here, but there you go. So you can see the dudes, so they're picking up, it's time lapse, so it's like, and they're throwing up the ramp and they're doing all this stuff. And then finally at the very end, after they get the amber drums off, they pick this thing up. And you can see they fold it up and they pick it up and then they carry it down the stage. And you can also see it if you look on my my homepage, my YouTube homepage. You can see in the picture the drums are sitting right on it. And what they did is they would drill like pilot holes, because Bonham wanted his kit set up as I'm sure most guys did, set up exactly the same way every time. And because he'd play Moby Dick, with his hands and stuff, when you play drums with your hands hard, the drums move. If you hit the drum real hard, especially the snare on the stand, it slides around. When I used to play Moby Dick with the Zeppelin bands I was in, the drums would actually start moving around. To my chagrin, Anyway, but with Bonham, what they would do is, the bass drum spur holes and the floor tom leg holes, they take off the rubber things. And they would, Bonham, at one point they would set it exactly like I want it, and they would drill holes in the plywood, probably not very deep, but just enough to set the stuff into so it wouldn't move. But then also what happens is, in theory, the sound of the drums is also on a reflective surface. So at any time when Bonham played his drums, weren't on a rug. I mean, there might have been some pictures where you do see his drums on a rug, but I think that, anyway, that picture I have on my homepage, I think it's from 72-ish, I think it's from Australia, maybe 71, I don't know. But that's something you could do too. But that's an interesting Bonham tidbit. What's another Bonham tidbit? What are some... Shut up, genius! Moxie, it's alright, my dog's making a racket. It's alright. Her name's actually Moxie. Sometimes I call her Genius. Anyway, I'll get you out in a minute. Who loves you, baby? I'm making a video. It's okay. I might have to go get her. Be patient. I'm going to go get her real fast. You can see her. Hang on. Come on. Get on here. Oh, yeah. This is it. Yes. This is the dog you hear in the video sometimes. Oh, who loves you, baby? Oh, yeah. Anyway, so back to Bonhamville. What else are we talking about? So the bass drum had muffling, snare drum muffling when I've seen, you can see him mess with, and you can hear it too. Even the Madison Square Garden stuff from 73 when you hear Moby Dick, I think he undoes, it just makes the drum a little livelier sounding. And it just sounds a little better when you're doing the rolls and stuff, the paradiddle diddles and everything that you do. Although I will say, when you see him doing Moby Dick, there's some 1977 footage. I think Plant Page used to film a lot of the Zeppelin stuff. I mean, film and videotape. If you look at that Earl's Core stuff from 75, that's actually videotape. That's not film. So they used to videotape a lot of that stuff. And you hear a little later when Bonham's on the stainless steel kit, his snare drum is actually pretty muffled. Like when you hear him doing Moby Dick, and he's flipping around doing like the paradiddle diddles and the doubles, and the drum actually, you notice the sound. It's a tighter. I think he started tuning the drum a little tighter as he got older, but you can tell it's still muffled, and I think it doesn't sound as good when he's doing all those rolls and flipping around the toms and stuff. I think you sound better when he would undo the tone control a little bit. Anyway, spread out. Spread out. Anyway, so, and what else? What was some more Bonham Zeppelin chat? There was a couple other things, because people sometimes will ask about this. It was, hey, when you're in that video, you were talking about the 8-minute mark, for 30 seconds you talked about, and then... Anyway, I always did want to, I always thought it would be cool if I love to, if I could approach Jimmy Page and say, listen, man, I really would like to make a... See, I always feel like in a lot of the Zeppelin documentaries you see, books or articles or whatever, it's like the interviews always ask the wrong questions. I want to ask specific questions about recording, this type of thing, if they have any pictures from the studio. We've all heard that, their first session was on Gerrard Street in London. It was really loud and it sounded great. I mean, let's hear that for the 9th time in another documentary. You know what I'm saying? I want to, ask specific questions. What mics did you use here? When you recorded the amp, was it facing the corner? Did you have a mic on the other side of the room? How was your, all that kind of stuff? Did you speed stuff up? Did you slow stuff down? And that's the last thing I'll talk about real fast because I can't think of anything else to talk about. Is Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, because he produced all that stuff, used to mess with this. A couple other guys were asking about that when I made the Song Remains the Same video. Anyway, Jimmy Page used to speed up and slow down the tape, because back then everything was recorded on tape. They would speed it up. I think sometimes they would, this is all my opinion, is sometimes they would, record the drums. They would, I think when, what you do is, especially the best way to record a tune, I think, is to sit and you do a run through and you have the bass guitar mic'd up. You get what they call a rhythm bed. And you run through till just the basic core of the song is just nice and solid. And then from there you overdub everything on the top. You redo the vocals, throw a couple more guitar parts on. Anyway, what I'm trying to make, I think, is sometimes when they would record, they would do everything, and I think sometimes they would slow the drums down. because when you slow it down, you get sort of a meatier sound. So if I'm talking to you like this and you slow it down, it kind of sounds like this, you know. But with the drums, it just gives it a fuller, every discrete note, if you slow it down, lasts longer. So instead of you get, you know what I mean, a cymbal crash, you get, you know. And I think that sometimes they did that, and sometimes they might have just slowed the whole thing down and then had Robert Plant sing his vocals on top of that. So even the guitars would have been slowed down a little, because I know sometimes you mentioned that like the tuning's a little funky. You know, like it's a little flat or it's a little sharp. I think what happens is they'd slow the tape down and have Robert Plant sing and stuff on top, or they'd even just slow the tape down before they, you know, when they mix it or whatever. But I think generally when they did speed up, or when they did slow the tape down, I think they would have Robert Plant sing his stuff over the slowed down tracks. But I also think they sped stuff up. Like, especially on Houses of the Holy, if you listen to a couple of those songs, like The Song Remains the Same and I think Celebration Day, some of those tunes, I think the whole thing sped, even like his vocal. You know what I mean? Like if you listen, especially to The Song Remains the Same on Houses of the Holy, I mean, it sounds, I mean, even when I was little, when I was younger, I'd listen, I'd be like, God, you know, listen. It was almost funny when Robert Plant would be like, yeah. I mean, his voice sounded like almost, it was on the edge of like elfin. You know what I mean? But I think too, I think if you listen to me, if you listen to No Quarter, I think the rhythm bed, or at least the drums, are slowed down on No Quarter, which again is of Houses of the Holy. You know, bands sometimes would get into like, you know, little fads, you know, they get into something. I think that Jimmy Page, when he produced these records, especially House of the Holy, I think he, on that record especially, he messed with the speed of the tape when they were mixing. And of course, even though No Quarter, I think, was recorded for Zeppelin 4, but it was on Zeppelin 5 or House of the Holy. So there were a couple other interesting things I was going to talk about. Oh, check this out. Moxie, look. Look. See that doggy over? Yeah, you see that doggy. Yeah, give her a lick. Alrighty. Anyway, so this was a bottom chat. I was going to make actually 2 videos today. I was going to make 4 sticks and then sick again. But I went down to my camera's out of juice. So what can you do? So I'm making this. Let's see what else. So there were a couple other things. Oh, I did see the Jason Bonham thing. I got a chance to see that. A friend of mine had tickets, so I went. He played out in St. Charles in Illinois a couple nights ago, and I checked it out. And I think Jason Bonham's a darn good guy, and, you know, God love him. I think he's in recent years gotten into playing the Zeppelin stuff, whereas I think in years past he really didn't have much interest in it. I mean, God love him. It was his own drumming style. He had his own drumming style. The way he played, you know, the way he didn't play anything really like his dad to me. God love him. You know, I think that's cool. You know, it's good to be your own player, you know, although I do have a fetish for Bonham's style of playing the drum, as many of us do. But it was interesting, though. I mean, I only ended up staying for about half of it. I just, you know, they were playing a lot of Zeppelin-y stuff, and, you know, I mean, again, it just wasn't the same. It wasn't Zeppelin playing it, you know, but they did a great job. I mean, the singer was great, the guitar player and everything was great. You know, of course, Jason Bonham was playing, and he really went out of his way to play a lot like his dad on that stuff. Again, you know, the sound. You know, it's interesting with cymbals. You know, if you play Zeppelin stuff, I hate to say it, but especially with the Vita Zildjians, which are B20 alloy, with Paiste cymbals, there's a certain shimmer, especially with B8 alloy. The nature of the alloy, there's a shimmer and a pitch that, and frequencies actually do come through the music. Like, and Zeppelin just doesn't. I think his crash cymbals were either. I gotta sit you down, buddy. Alrighty. His crash cymbals were, I think, 8 customs, and I'm not knocking Zildjians. I have tons of Zildjians. I have cymbals up the wazoo, and I love Zildjians. But I'm just saying, especially for Zeppelin, it's just when you play. You know, it would have been nice if he was playing, at the very least, even ZBTs. You know, from the audience, if he was just playing any Zildjian B8 alloy cymbal. You know, old Amirs or whatever. From the audience, it still sounded like, psh, it would sound better than, you know, it's just with Zeppelin, it just doesn't, you know, the cymbals weren't cutting through, and they just didn't sound the same. Anyway, that's just another Zeppelin Bonham nitpicky thing. And anyway, so I have more videos coming up, and that's it. So let me shut this off. Hopefully this worked.